What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Recording, and I know that so much of this week's videos have covered the Cyberpunk 2077 news cycle, but I am definitely mixing in other topics. We've had YouTube news this week, Hollywood news, some tech news, some new YouTube features, and so much more. And we are now only 13,000 subscribers away from 1 million. If you're watching and you like or appreciate what I'm doing, hopefully today will be the day I earn your subscription. Once we reach 1 million, I will give you 1 month off of my sub begging. And if you've been watching my videos for a long time, you know that's pretty solid. Now, so much of the Cyberpunk 2077 reviews have been around almost nothing to do with the gameplay, and have focused almost exclusively on how it handles representation of X, whatever that particular thing is. And the largest complaint we have about this game is the representation of trans folks. And the bizarre thing to me, like, I want to say first and foremost, no video game has any requirement to represent anybody or anything the way some game journalist wants. And ultimately, bending the knee and wavering to these type of demands only lead to further, more impossible demands that you'll never really ever satisfy these people. Smash like now if you know exactly what I mean. Now, Cyberpunk 2077 has had no shortage of reviews whinging and complaining about various points of representation. A valid complaint, I suppose, not exactly what you want to hear in a video game review, but that's what gets clicks on Twitter. And so much of what gets clicks on Twitter drives what is quote-unquote modern-day games journalism. Obviously, this is a touchy subject, and I want everyone to know that regardless of who you are, what your orientation or whatever, you're welcome here. I appreciate you, and I support you. I think that a lot of that gets lost in this narrative, particularly about me, because I'll criticize this type of stuff, but don't get it twisted. Like, I 100% support the trans community and LGBTQ community and everybody, the straight community, everybody. You know, I want everybody to watch my videos. I want everyone to feel welcome here. And that's how it is in my Discord too. But that's not what video game reviewers want, because they can't whinge and complain about the game itself. They want to do this. Now, Anita Sarkeesian, of course, injects herself. Even just a few years ago, we would never have had a mainstream review of a mainstream AAA game that dedicates the opening 7 paragraphs to the game's success or failure at trans representation. That's not nothing, says Anita Sarkeesian, praising this. Now, what I'll say clearly is that that's not game journalism. That's not what people are looking for in a video game review. And I don't think that's what trans folks give a crap about in a video game review. You're talking about like the wokest game ever. You can change literally every single part of your body. You can identify however you wish in the game. And there's Anita, of course, getting roasted. Anita, I'm not going to lie, I forgot you existed. Don't care, going to run over hookers. Thanks on the heads up not to read the review. Oh, look, someone needs money. You know, I prefer reviews that are about the game. Reviews have been going downhill for a while now. Just a few years ago, we would have had terrible reviews. I don't know about that. And there are just literally hundreds of people in there saying that. And look, Anita's got to make her money, and this is what she does, and I respect her hustle. She's just wrong here. Nobody in the gaming community wants this in their video game reviews. If you want to write about it, fine, but that's not a video game review that any normal game consumer is interested in. And by the way, that includes trans game consumers. There is a tiny vocal minority of people that are obsessed with this stuff. And that's what you get from this Polygon article. And there's an absolutely great article by Sophia Narwitz. By the way, I mean, it always feels cringe to say, but who is trans and who I do consider a friend of mine, who talks about this. Cyberpunk 2077 trashed over trans issues. Activist gamer press don't want good games. It wants victimhood. And it's always easier, since this is such a touchy subject, to not use my words, but to use the words of somebody who actually is trans. The hotly anticipated Cyberpunk 2077 has become a hotbed of gender politicking controversy, but with all of it forced by gaming media, more focused on activism than anything else. It's time for gamers to push back. For well over 2 years now, activists disguised as journalists have been heaping unjust criticism on Polish game development studio CD Projekt Red, most well known for universally loved Witcher 3, a title which itself was thrown into a controversy when critics complained that it didn't feature enough black people. The dev team has consistently fallen under the ire of so-called jacktivists for perceived social justice slights, the most prevalent which are baseless accusations of transphobia. You can see this tweet encouraging people to pirate the game. This all began in 2018 when a CDPR Twitter account jokingly replied to somebody asking if they had assumed their gender. Within no time at all, the press latched on and cried about how the joke was harmful. To anyone paying close attention as it all went down, it was obviously nothing more than a lame attempt to push an agenda. A bullying tactic of sorts that wasn't a coincidence that months prior to the very same members of the media were losing their minds over the lack of non-binary gender options in the game that were still ultimately over 2 years away. Fast forward to the week where reviews of the game are finally coming out, and the media's petulant crybabies are once again using their platform to throw a tantrum. By the way, Sophia's Twitter handle is Sofnar0747. Definitely worth a follow. I don't know if she's on Parler or not, but I assume she is. You should follow her there as well. An op-ed on the website, thegamer.com, where it says Cyberpunk 2077 will lead trans people to getting ended. Comic Book Resources echoes the sentiment by saying it's creating an atmosphere of bad behavior towards this community. Meanwhile, actual reviews of the game aren't much better, with GameSpot, Vice, The Verge, Polygon, RPG Site, The Washington Post, and others lamenting how the game handles trans people. The grievances bring up a lack of non-binary pronoun options, a lack of significant trans players, and a lack of trans politicizing. The last point being particularly eye-opening, as Kotaku straight up complains that it doesn't feel as if the developers want to specifically address queerness and transness. A blatant admittance that what the gaming press seeks is affirmative propaganda. They want their games to be vessels for promoting their activist agendas and not, what the consumer seeks, a good game. This is an excellent point by Sophia here. Even the Polygon review, which spends the first 7 paragraphs focusing on trans issues, still somehow manages to spin the presentation of a trans flag within the game as a bad thing. Representation danged if you do and danged if you don't. You see here, Company 1 puts trans character in game, gets immediately attacked by activists. Company 2 announces film with trans leads, get immediately attacked by activists. Trans activists, why is no one giving us representation? Being that I am a tranny myself, that's her words, not mine, I take issue with all of this. There's no single entity more significantly harmful to the widespread acceptance of trans people than the overly woke crowd. I 100% agree with this. Put me in a room with 1 woke person and 9 actual bigots, and I guarantee you if that single woke person has access to Twitter, they're doing more widespread harm to people like me than whatever insults the 9 may levy my way. The never-ending cycle of outrage only serves to make trans people look mentally ill if it's further unaided by the fact that any and everything is enough to get a person labeled a bigot. It's peak insanity. It's emblematic of a group of self-made victims who would rather burn bridges than build them. Everything they do, the nonstop toxicity, the whining, the anger, only pushes potential allies away. Excellent point. And honestly, I can't blame normal people for coming up and walking away. I wouldn't want to associate with the people that I'm lumped in by default with. How can I possibly expect others to? I mean, very good point. And I've talked about this, and I won't read her whole article. I think you should read it over on RT.com. I'm sure she's tweeted it out. If not, I'll retweet it. Because, yeah, I mean, look, I understand that humans are human, and they're going to have some, trouble adjusting. I mean, my dog trainer just told me this last weekend that her brother-in-law had recently transitioned, and now she messes up her pronouns. It had come up like organically in a conversation, and it's just like, she's not a bigot. She's just a normie. She's just got to learn, right? And if you get in her face and you're like, oh, you're terrible, you're phobic, you're this, you're that, well, then what are normal people going to do? They're going to turn away, and they're going to push back against it. And that's what these people on Twitter do. They vilify people who are most of them are just getting like used to the idea and trying to be accepting. It takes time. It's a process. All right. It's not going to happen overnight. And it's certainly not going to happen when you're canceling people for not bending the knee. But again, we're talking about a very tiny percentage, very vocal minority that still wields, for whatever reason, a ridiculous amount of power in the video game industry as well as Hollywood. Back to the Cyberpunk issue at hand, none of the anger stands up to scrutiny. It's a mix of entitlement and warped views to the extreme. No games, every time I say to the extreme, I want to say it like I rock the mic like a vandal. Anyway, sorry, I'm old. No game owes anybody socio-political affirmation. Yeah, I just said that. And now we have gaming press that doesn't view titles based on merits of being a good game, but instead on whether it contains a set amount of activism. And if the game doesn't meet a leftist quota, then they have proven time and time again that they will trash it unless it conforms. These thrashings don't even make logical sense. Consider a fake advertisement in Cyberpunk 2077. It depicts a woman with a bulging package under a leotard promoting a drink. It's being painted as phobic because of all these reasons, but that when men and women are constantly depicted in this manner. I'm going to leave the rest of her article for you to read, because I do want you to read it. I do want to support Sophia, who does independent journalism in a wide variety of areas. And no, I think that Cyberpunk is it's going to be a great game, and not every game has to be pushing certain politics, whether you agree with them or not. Sometimes people just like to play a video game, and that includes all people. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.